Hey everyone, welcome to Resilience Unravelled. This podcast is a result of my fascination with subjects like resilience, accountability, burnout, life fulfillment and other life and work-based performance issues, as well as many of the other obsessions I bump into in my life. I spend my time working with highly successful teams, people and organisations, and this podcast introduces their remarkable stories and expertise, as well as my own synthesis of the key issues, strategies, tips, tools and resources to thrive in life. If you find this podcast useful, why not go over to our site qedod.com. If you'd like some resources on how to manage and beat burnout, head to qedod.com/burnout2019 for some goodies. Stay tuned to the end to find out details of how to order a free ebook. Enjoy the podcast. So today we're going to do something different. We're going to jump into the career and the world of a woman called Lorraine Laidlaw. Now, I met Lorraine many years ago when I was actually working for her in a client organisation, and it's fair to be said, I think, that she and I hit it off pretty well. And we worked together, and she was doing that thing, working in an organisation where she was getting paid a regular salary, going in and looking smart, and doing what she had to do and playing the company line. And then I met her quite recently, and there she was doing what we call a portfolio career. And she had many different sort of strings and bows, and she and I had conversations between one point and the next. But I thought it'd be fascinating to talk to someone who had actually made that leap from the corporate setting into that portfolio journey. So good afternoon, Lorraine.
Good afternoon, Russell.
So would that be fair to say you're a portfolio worker now? Would you describe yourself as that?
I wouldn't, because I work on the premise that, like a serial killer, in order to be a serial killer, you have to have killed 3 or more people. And I only have 2 portfolio roles, so I don't consider myself to be a portfolio holder as yet.
You do realise I'm going to have some terrible jokes about cornflakes now, don't you? But to be fair, what you've done though is you've moved away from that single source of income, that one job that you've had for many, many years and such like.
Yes, I have done that.
Why don't you fill us in on what your careers look like and what's, just quickly, a couple of minutes, what's brought you to this point where you are today?
Well, I think I've got a history of changing direction throughout my career, and I use that term loosely because career always suggests to me that somebody who's got a sort of designated path, something that they've thought about, and a direction of travel that they're aiming to go in. And I don't think that my working life has been particularly like that. But I think about 3.5, coming on for 4 years ago, I was doing, as you say, I was employed. I was earning a wage. I was in a senior leadership role in quite an intense environment, having been working to achieve a number of significant goals for an organisation that was under a lot of pressure. And those goals have been set by not only just the organisation, but by government as well. We'd come a significant way towards achieving those, and some of those targets had been achieved. And it was that circumspect moment of sitting back saying, have I got more to give on this? Is this what I want to do? Is this still right for me? In actual fact, it was a sort of health thing that changed my direction. I thought I had something quite wrong. I was struggling with my breathing, and long story, and it turned out to be asthma. But I thought something was significantly wrong. And my husband and I had talked about travelling ever since we first got together 100 years ago, and it was that made me sit back and say, actually, that was a close call. I may not be so lucky next time, and maybe it's time for us to get up and go. And so we both gave up our jobs. We went travelling for 10 months. And so when I came back, it was a decision of, did I go back into that work environment, earning the wage, full-time, intense role, or did I do something else? And I struggled for about 6 months in that transitional period. I was still applying for full-time roles. I was getting interviews, but I wasn't getting the role. I was very reflective of whether that was because that 10 months or by that time over a year had an impact. or whether in fact it was that there was an age thing. I don't know. I can't say that. And after about 6 months, I sat back and I was going for a job interview. My husband said, "What's the job today?" And I told him, and he said, "Do you want this job?" And I said, "No, not really. I don't want to work for this organisation. I'd known this organisation many, many years ago, and I didn't really want to go back. But I thought it was a job I could quite easily do." And I realised then this was a silly thing to be doing. I sat back and thought, no, I'm not applying for any more roles. And within a really short space of time, I mean weeks, somebody contacted me and said, "There's a role going in this organisation. I think you'd be ideal for it." And I applied and I got a position there. And somebody who I was already doing some voluntary work for in the Football Association, I was approached to ask if I would wanted to be involved in a paid role, and I set the I did the studying, etc., and been involved in that ever since. So those two things. I also do some work on inclusion and diversity, again in a voluntary role, because that's really important to me as well.
Okay.
So that's how I come to be where I am now.
Fantastic. And so you've indicated a couple of things there. I mean, what line of work would you say you're in? Would you call yourself a legal professional, or how do you describe what you actually do? Your area of expertise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a qualified barrister, but my role started out as I actually started out as a police officer. That was my first sort of main job, and it just kind of morphed into the world of law, and I found it fascinating, and ended up doing my law degree and qualifying as a barrister. But as my career progressed, I moved more into the management side, and certainly at that time, to be a hybrid of a lawyer manager was quite an unusual position. And I found a sort of a niche, if you like, there to explore that further, because I found whilst I was an okay lawyer, I was actually I found myself more comfortable in the leadership role, and bringing those two skill sets together seemed to work, and that has really assisted me as I've gone through all the different roles, having that sort of foot in both camps, as it were.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people paint themselves into being one thing, don't they? And they almost deny themselves the permission to be something else. I know I can't do that because I'm this. But it sounds like you sort of played with some of the concepts of saying, well, why don't I do something different? Is that fair? I
think that's absolutely fair. And I've done that every single job I've had. Even my first job when I left school at 16, I worked for a travel company. They used to ferry people on coaches around Europe, and my job was to get all the brochures ready and get the currency ready for the coach drivers. But on a Friday, the coaches would all come back, and they asked the people in the office during the busy time, would they come down and help clear out the coaches? Well, the other ladies in the office, no, they weren't interested in that. For me, I thought, great, it's a nice sunny afternoon, let's get out of the office, let's go down and clean the buses. Another job I had, I worked for a coat manufacturer, again in the office, and they were looking for somebody to help out on the switchboard. And so I got trained up on the switchboard. I helped out in the children's play group. And it was all those things. And I always say that to people, you know, I've worked with a lot of young people, particularly my last job. I think 78% of the people on my team were under 30. And it's about that being flexible, because you don't know what your skill sets are. Just because you are good at one thing, it's important to explore the other things as well, because you may find there's other things that you're particularly good at. Cleaning coaches, obviously, is a bit of a niche market, but do you know what I mean? It opens you up, and it shows that you are somebody who is flexible, you know, who's supportive and committed to an organisation, and as I say, it gets you out and explores other things.
So do you think that sort of throw yourself in, have a go, just say yes, do you think that's missing in younger people today? Do you think they're being brought up to be slightly more rigid? I mean, what's your view? Because there's a lot of talk about this younger population being less resilient than than older generations. What's your view?
There is that, but I'm trying to think now. About 8 years ago, I decided, I looked at my CV, and it was a bit, it'd been a long time since I'd done any formal studies. So I decided to sign myself up and go back to university to do a master's degree in human resource management. And so I was the oldest by, a significant amount. So all the people that were on my course were all young, bright young things who were looking to develop themselves. Some had just come straight out of university. Others, because it was human resource, were actually working in that role. And it really changed my mindset about young people. We have lots of perceptions, lots of things are said about them. But I met some incredibly bright people, and I learned a lot from them. So I think that mindset of just grouping people and saying they're young people, they're brought up in a certain way, or they've got a certain mindset. And yes, they're very driven. And the ones, the people that I've worked with, there is a sort of a desire to get on. And this idea about staying in a role for, say, 2 years, that's too long for them. They want to get on quickly, 8 months, I want the next job kind of thing. But, do that, having those conversations and spending time with people, it does change your perception. And what you realize is, actually, I can learn a lot from them as much as they could learn from me.
And we've, in our generation, sort of created a world where you have to be really fast, very nimble, very agile, all those bits of jargon. And then we have the next generation coming through who want to be nimble, fast and agile. And we're sort of going, well, hang on a minute, that just means you're flaky. And it actually doesn't it? It's actually, they're saying that they're coping in a very different world from us. And it's interesting, you have it in HR, we haven't always necessarily built organizations to really think about where we're going. They're sort of more focused on where we've come from, in a sense.
Absolutely. And having dipped out of the workplace and had that time off and come back into the work environment, it's given me time to reflect when I was going for roles and not getting them, is to say, well, hold on a minute. The big picture is, we've changed the retirement age. That's going to be 66 plus. Yeah. So we are going to need to think differently about the work environment. People, are they going to be able to continue to stay in the role from, say, 18 to 66 or 70? No, that, we're going to need to look at how people can just take a bit of time out and then pop back in the work environment. This idea of working and retiring at 60 or 65, we need to stop thinking like that. So we also need to think the young people that are driving forward at the moment and enthusiastic, and, they want to get on and they want to be successful, probably around 45 or 50, they're going to need to recharge those batteries, because they've still got a long old road ahead of them. So we do need to think in a much broader way. How are we going to manage the way we work? Is it going to need to be a full-time? Are we going to need to look at career breaks like other countries do? I think it's in the Netherlands, if you work for a certain amount of time, you can have, a period of time up to 3 months off. That kind of work environment. We do need to think a bit more carefully about that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's so if you think about the choice you were making, you were sort of basically saying, I'm getting to the stage where I've been, working in the traditional world, in a traditional job, in a traditional way. You had the asthma thing, and then that'll give you the perspective to come back and make a decision. But do you think, having had that mindset of re-looking at your CV, rethinking about yourself, repositioning and rebranding yourself, being open to change throughout your kind of career, do you think that made that decision easier in a way?
Yes and no. Yes, it made it, because I've been there before, and I know that I've come out the other side. No, in the sense that I loved my job. I loved where I work. I loved the people. It was so hard to step away. And I think I went through the whole of the time I was away, and even probably a year after that, in, almost loss. It's almost like a grieving process, because I found the job, after all the jobs I'd had, the one that I believe made the most impact, and the one that had the most impact on me. So, but I think that's what you have to do. It's a bit like, this is, this is sort of a pinnacle, and what's it they say, always leave them wanting more. and being brave enough to step away. It's knowing that timing. Don't overstay your welcome.
Yes. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people underestimate the socialization that you get from working in a large organization. And then when you work on your own or a small organization, or you're in and out of different sorts of organizations, how you get that socialization fix has to come in a different way. So how do you do that?
It did take me some time to adapt to that, to working, some of the work, part of the work that I do from home. I do it in some of it I do on the telephone, so I'm communicating, but I'm not interacting with people, in a face-to-face. And I think the first 6 or 9 months, again, that transition period, I think part of it was I formalized it, if you like. So when I was working, I was in a separate zone. I structured my day so that was the working day. And I've got quite a good social life anyway, so that was the way I kind of did it. And it's just coming to terms with it. A lot of it is coming to terms with it yourself, in your own mind, that kind of rationalizing, what your fears are, saying, well, that's okay to feel, like I'm not interacting with people. That's something I've always been very good at, or I've always felt that I'm very good at, a good communicator with people. And to not be doing that, I'm just communicating in a different way. So I then focus my efforts on, when I'm doing my written reasons, they're going to be, I want them to be the best. So you just have another focus, you just shift.
And so that comfort would change, that sort of, how can I describe it? Comfort would change, I suppose, is the best way of thinking about it. How is that something you build over the course of time? Is it a skill, or was that something you were born with?
What, comfort with what, people, or with?
Yeah, the ambiguity of the way you work now, I suppose.
I think it's always been that way, right the way back, as I say, to those kind of early jobs. It's a sort of, not a sixth sense, but an understanding of yourself, of what you're doing, of that being reflective of, how am I doing? Am I delivering what I need to deliver? And then that personal element, that personal sort of health check. What's this doing to me? I took a, sort of, I don't know, Thelma and Louise moment at the end of 1999 into 2000, although obviously I survived that particular leap.
Yes,
and I left I left an organisation that I've been working with for a number of years, and it was a career, and I'd worked my way up in that career. But I felt that I'd gone for a new role. I'd been there about 18 months, but I felt that the role wasn't as I'd expected it to be. I wasn't fully appreciated in that role, and it was having an effect on me. I was traveling quite some distance. I felt that it wasn't particularly good for my physical and mental health. And I just decided that they should have made me redundant when they had a reshuffle, and they didnand so I took the bull by the horns and said, you need to make me redundant. You need to pay me off, let me go. And and that was a really big thing. I felt great about it. My husband was more concerned about it than I was, but I felt it was absolutely the right thing. The organisation wasn't prepared to make a decision, so I made it for them and said, you need to do this, and they went ahead and did that. And it was a risky strategy, because I had a mortgage, I had children. How were we going to manage? I mean, we're not on the breadline, but it's that kind of thing of, I need to do this, because if I don't know what will become of me. And then, things happen. You get a phone call from somebody you worked with a few years before who says, hey, I hear you're leaving there. Let's have a chat. And, that doesn't work for everyone. I've been particularly lucky, but I didn't rely on that. I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't imagine that it would, but it did. And I've been very lucky that for the majority of my career, as I've moved from one role, that something else has come up, that somebody has rung me.
Appeared. But you see,
yes.
I wonder if you, we chatted about this before, I wonder if you underestimate that fact that you've built networks, you've been out to meet people, you are sociable, you are personable, and here we are, we're chatting. It's a long time since we've done any specific work together, but you are in people's networks and in people's minds, and we meet up and have coffees and have chats, and we have a good time, don't we? And
we do.
and I think it's a secret. I think you become overly insular, and you have that thing where if you decide to make a decision, it's surprising how many people will hear about that because of your network. And I meet people who get stuck into jobs, and I'll say to them on a regular basis, "Are you building your network?" And they'll frequently say no. What they're doing is they're building their political clout within an organization. And what happens is when they need to move on, they've not built their political clout outside of the organization, which is much more powerful in actual fact, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I network always sounds, I mean, people are a bit afraid of the term because it almost sounds like it's very superficial and I only know you because of your job, but that's okay. The fact is you've got something in common. So, I'm particularly interested about inclusion and diversity. So I have quite a large network of people that I've never met before, but we have a common goal. The same within the legal world. There are people who are in the sort of very wide sense of the legal world, not just in the courtroom behind, etc. And again, we have a common goal. If I talk to somebody, for example, I was in Liverpool earlier this year and I happened to be having a drink in a bar and chatting to another couple, and she's a lawyer, and I said, what are you doing? She just qualified. And I said, look, if you ever need any help or anything like that, here's my LinkedIn, let's get in touch if there's anything I can do. Because I feel that not that my journey, my sort of career journey is over, but I feel that I'm in a position that I still want to help other people. I still contact people. I help people with their CVs, or if they're applying for a job, people I worked with years back. I say, just give me a call. Let's sit down. Let's have a chat. Because, that's what it is. It's about helping other people.
Okay. I mean, there's this horrible phrase about paying it forward, which I think...
Paying it forward, yes.
Yeah.
Just come back from America. They're all over it. But
yeah,
yes,
we're all
it is,
over
of
that.
course.
But it is a bit, isn't it? But the idea of paying it forward is that there's a sort of expectation. I think the thing to do is to do what you think is right, but have no expectation of something in return. And then because I think there are some people who do the paying it forward thing in a sort of very conscious way, and then they're quite disappointed when nothing comes of it. And you don't. Networks don't work that way. The point of a network is that you're sitting in the middle of your spider's web, and it's 8 or 9 degrees of jingling and other spiders, all over the place, hearing the message, and sometimes being consciously paying it forward. Sometimes it seems like you're being played almost, doesn't it? And I think
yes.
I think just being yourself and making a genuine offer. I mean, I've done things for people where I have no expectation ever of getting anything from it, and I've never been disappointed because often I've got nothing. But that's fine because you give your time willingly, don't you? To
absolutely. I don't want anything for it. I mean,
exactly.
You and I have discussed this before. There's a lot of work, and I know you do a lot of work with organisations, and the organisation I worked for previously that you were involved in, particularly around the management side of it. But I go on all the time about this, but I feel that sort of first line managers are the ones that are at the greatest exposed within an organization, because they're new to the role. They're finding their feet. They don't have necessarily, they don't have a lengthy career. They haven't had those breadth of experiences, and yet they seem to come up against some of the most difficult and challenging problems in the workplace. And worst case scenario, because most organizations now work in open plan environments, they have difficult conversations and then return to their desk where they sit with those individuals. Whereas the higher up the ladder you go, you have those difficult conversations and you walk back away to another part of the office or to another office or entirely. And that's that. So that's why I always feel that, those are the people that I always try and give, that extra support to, and I did when I was working full time. And that kind of open door. You've got a problem. Let's talk about it. And how did you handle that? And how might you those? Because I think as I've got older, I found that I became more experienced. The conversations that I had much earlier on in my career. I know how hard I found them. But I think as you've been through that, you become more confident. And I think actually as you get a little bit older, you become a bit more blasé. You think, well, look, that we're going to have this conversation, so let's just crack on with it.
And I think the sort of role or rise of the mentor, I think, has been fascinating, because I think focusing people on, I know you don't like the word career particularly in that sense, but I think focusing people on having this idea of a longer career, that you're going further, that you need to build skills, that you need to actually get to the place where you're going to give something back. And like you've done, you come to a point where you leave a traditional job and you say, well, I can be a consultant, I can run my own business. And I think there are a lot of people out there, and you were very clear about this, but you knew yourself well enough to say this wasn't me. But a lot of people have a go at being entrepreneurs and realize they can't do it. But what you do is you built a portfolio career out of getting a number of projects or contracts and pulling those things together. And there are lots of different structures now that you can start thinking about earlier in your life. And I think mentoring is good as to, I meet younger people and they say, and ask, who's your mentor? And they say, well, we've got this mentor, and they're helping me deal with the next thing in front of my nose, which is a difficult person. I think, well, that's sort of coaching, isn't it? Yeah. This idea of the being someone being there who is a wise sage, who's passing down knowledge is good, is useful for people.
It is, and it's also useful on the other side of the coin to be able to see people who aren't very good at what they do, because you can see that compare and contrast, and having the common sense, if you like, to sit back and look at it. But I think alongside that is running that sort of formalized knowledge, the training side of it, because the theory is as important as the practice. And I think organizations are offering training, but that's one of the things that tends to get hit by the budget. So the mentor is seen as a sort of a fill-in, if you like, or a replacement of the formalized training. And I don't think that's right. I think those things have to go hand in hand.
And actually people forget that the mentors get a huge amount out of it as well. And that's the point as well. It's a win-win, isn't it? It always has been.
There is nothing nicer, Russell, than hearing from somebody that you work with and that you've offered support to along the way, who emails you or sends you a text message to say, I just got this job, or I've just been promoted. That to me is, without sounding too cheesy, those are the proudest moments of my career. Hearing somebody who was going to, was showing all those, lights of stardom, but they didn't know it, and supporting them and, encouraging them along the way, and then seeing them as, becoming successful. That's really wonderful.
So if you were to meet someone who was in your position 3 or 4 years ago, and they're sitting there thinking, is this all there is, perhaps, or I want to do something different, are there things that you would counsel people to think about from your own experience to help them make a decision and maybe turn that corner into the next phase of their careers?
That's a really good question. I've certainly been asked whether in my own, personalizing it for me, in hindsight, was that a good decision for me to go off traveling? And perhaps was there things I could have and should have done before I made that decision, in that sort of preparation? And I would say yes. I think if your decision is that in 5 years' time, I don't want to be working in this organisation, and I'd like to see myself moving into a portfolio route, or perhaps stepping back a little from your current role, then part of that is, doing some of the things that I did, which is taking on some voluntary role to sort of expand your experiences and your CV and take it in a different direction. But sometimes you just have to jump and kind of worry about it afterwards. You can have all the plans in place. I from my personal perspective, when I went traveling, I really thought that when I came back that I would be able to do some consultancy or some interim work, etc. I hadn't done enough homework to realize that actually the area that I worked primarily in is not an area that you often get a lot of interim work in. And in terms of consultancy, I have been a consultant. A number of years ago, I worked in Eastern Europe. I worked in Croatia and Serbia and Kosovo, even in Nigeria. But there was a gap in time from that date to the date that I returned. And consultancy had moved on, and that just didn't happen. So perhaps if you're a bit more thoughtful than I was, and perhaps a bit more realistic, then I could and should have done a little bit more before I made that decision. But I think not everybody's going to be as crazy as me and just give up their job in their mid-50s and go travelling. But if you are going to do that, I would suggest that you start to think about what you want to do when you get back, which I didn't do.
Yeah, but what you are showing actually is that you did give it all up and you were crazy and you went travelling and you've been fine.
Yes,
because
I've survived.
Because actually, well, it's not even surviving. Actually, it's because you're doing extremely well, and it's really because you built that network. You'd practice with change. You built the right sort of mindset. You came back and you were flexible enough actually to say, well, if this is not working, what else is there? And in a way, you discovered a niche that you probably never would have found.
That's very true. That's a very positive way of looking at it. And you're right. I mean, there weren't too many sad moments after I returned, and I am extremely happy with my lot now. And who's to say, if we were to have this conversation in 2 years' time, that I might be doing something completely different, because that's kind of how I've bumbled along. Each time something new comes along and you think, yes, that's interesting, that's a new challenge that will keep me out of mischief for another few years. So I think it is that. You're right, it's about being adaptable. It's about being it's about maintaining enthusiasm for everything you do as well. If you're not happy doing it, then why are you doing it? But we both meet an awful lot of people. I know, but we both meet an awful lot of people who aren't happy, and particularly at a certain point, particularly at our age, who are just looking for, they're looking for the finishing line. Yeah. I've spoken to people a few weeks ago, and they're saying, in 3 years' time, when I finish my job, I'm gonna go traveling in 3 years' time. And I say, well, you're fit and healthy now. What are you going to be like in 3 years' time? Don't have any regrets. And if you're desperate to go, then why don't you go? What's stopping you? This sort of 3 year thing. Why don't you think about other things? Exactly, especially these days, works, because of the way full employment's going at the moment. Work at organisations extremely flexible things, aren't they? It is more and more, and I think that's the benefit for young people is they're perhaps not going to be subject to the burnout and the pressure of the work environment, because the work environment has changed. They don't have to be sat at a desk from 8 or 8:30 every day. They can work from home. They can work in an open plan office. They can flex how they work. The work can work around their personal circumstances if they've got caring commitments, etc. It's just the longevity of the period they've got to cover. Now, I think that's the thing, and your message, I think, is really brilliant, which is, I like the way you talked about managing your enthusiasm, and this idea of saying there are times where there are going to be jobs where you're sitting there and you're not happy, but that thing gets you where you're going, and that's important, isn't it? So you can sort of weather that storm. And there are times when you have to look at it and say, I'm not happy, and it's taking me nowhere, and that's the point where you can start thinking, perhaps it's time to do what you did, actually, which is just make a choice and maintain control. And that's they're the simple building blocks of resilience when it all comes down to it. I think so, because I think you always said at training, there's only one person in charge of that, meaning your mouth, and it's you. And similarly, there's only one person really in charge of your career, and that's you. If you want those other things, then you need to find out, how can I get there? If I haven't got what I need, then I need to get those things. That's the way to look at it, is, constantly thinking about yourself as getting yourself in a place that you want to be, and and making sure that you're happy with that place. And if you're not, then, where else do I need to get to?
Lorraine, that's very wise. I see, I knew you were going to be wise and such like. And thank you so much. Thanks so much for spending time with us today on this podcast. It's been really insightful. I think it's interesting, talking to people who've actually done the maddest of all mad things, which is just to leave, have a holiday, come back and say it's going to be great. And lo and behold, it was. And I think actually we can see the building blocks as you talk about your journey, in a sense that it was probably never going to be in doubt. So thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Russell.
You take care.
Thanks for listening today. You can go to our site qedod.com/podcasts and subscribe to hear other titles in our series. Or you can contact us at info@qedod.com to hear and find out more about tough love, leadership, accountability, resilience and burnout. You can go to our site qedod.com/burnout2019 to hear and get access to a load of resources to help you manage and fight burnout. And you can go to qedod.com/free ebook to hear more about the fundamentals of resilience. Until the next episode, keep on thriving.